Welcome to this special edition podcast to celebrate the launch of You've Got This, my new book. I hope you've got it. I hope you're enjoying it. If you haven't, now is the time. Today's podcast is all about Jo Franco, who is an incredible lady who contributed to the book by sharing her experiences. Jo is an author, a speaker, a teacher, a polyglot, which is a word I've just learned, but actually a business superstar as well. She has over 1.3 million YouTube subscribers and has got 2 membership groups, Jo Club Fluent, which teaches language, and Jo Club Journal, which also teaches people how to journal and the positive experiences that can have. In addition to this, she is also a Netflix travel show host presenting the world's most amazing vacation rentals and hosts challenges and retreats. You can find out so much more through her website. She's also a podcast host for a show called Not Your Average Jo, and of course, she's in my book. Go and listen and enjoy. So, for people listening, can you tell us about how you got to where you are now? Because it's been quite a journey and you've done so much amazing stuff.
Yeah, so I have a wild backstory where this language I'm speaking, I shouldn't even be speaking. I was actually born in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. And so my life was supposed to be Brazilian and speaking Portuguese. And then when I was 5 years old, I moved to the States. My mom took us there for the American dream, very immigration story, classic. Grew up with my mom, cleaning houses on the weekends and just keeping my head down and doing my work. But in this time, I really fell in love with, well, first it was painful. Let's be real. It was very painful to grow up in between cultures and not speak English right away. And then after many, many hours of studying and hard work, I realized even though I was a kid, I was useful because I was getting asked to translate for the new kids that came, or asked I was helping my mom translating the documents that we needed to look at. So language became a big piece in my life because I saw it as a way to kind of go on this fast speed highway and help people and help myself. So even while I was a kid, I would study French and Italian and I would dream of this global life. And then right before college, I got my green card. I applied to school in New York. I got a business degree, international management, concentration in human resources, where I did not use that degree because shortly thereafter, I moved to Los Angeles and I started this crazy life being a full-time YouTuber, which was around 2013. So I started a long time ago, 10 years ago. And it was me and a college buddy, and we had no plan B. There was no money. I just had college debt because in the US, you graduate with like minimum $50,000 of debt. I had 70,000. And so for the first 5 years of my journey as a YouTuber, it was like scrambling to get brand deals, and there were no brand deals. That was not a part of the climate back then. So I would cold pitch CEOs, CMOs, and I'd be like, hey, I found this article. You guys are trying to expand in the young travel market. I have a young travel show, because that was the content of the show back in the day. And then one day I was kind of in the right place at the right time in this agency in Los Angeles. And this woman was like, hey, I just pitched you for a huge deal with this telecommunications company. Can you meet? And I was like, absolutely. And that was in 2015. And it was the last time I ever lived in the scramble financially, because after that, it just opened the world to learning how to be an on-camera talent, working with brands to come up with creative ideas. So I did that career from 2015 till 2019, full-time YouTuber. Always wanted to start my own business though. And so I did. I started a business called Shut Up and Go back in the day, had the trademark. That was my paychecks came from Shut Up and Go LLC, which is so cool. And I wanted to kind of create a similar opportunity for people like me, because now these companies that were asking us to travel, we couldn't do them because you can't be everywhere. So instead, I wanted to train collaborators and contributors. And I started sending people on trips. So I really wanted to build this big thing, but it imploded with my old business partner because we started when we were kids. And when you're together working like that, from 2015 to 2019, that's a transformational time in my life, at least it was. And so I hit the wall and I was like, I love travel, but I want to talk about something more profound. I feel like I have more to give. When I had this epiphany, I got an email from a Netflix executive saying they wanted us to audition, and I ended up getting the job. So I hosted a Netflix show for 2 seasons called The World's Most Amazing Vacation Rentals. It all sounds like a dream. Like, it literally doesn't even sound like it really happened. It's so bizarre. Anyways, I hosted the show during the pandemic, which was crazy. We started before the pandemic.
Wow.
Production continued. We stopped during pandemic time for 4 months. In that 4-month time, I started sharing photos of my personal journal entries, and I've journaled all my life, and like through all these crazy trips. And that turned into a challenge, a 30-day journaling challenge, which then I decided, I was like, wait, this is a company. And so during my 4-month pause, because of COVID, I was able to start a whole movement called Joe Club. And then we got back on set, and I filmed from July until January of 2021. So I was shooting a show for a year, which is like really unheard of. And during that time, I was continuing with Joe Club. I was building the company. I would take the one day off that I had from shooting. I would host live journaling sessions.
Wow.
And when the show ended, I was like, all right, gung ho, let's build this company. And so that's basically what I've been working on for the last 2 years. It's been a crazy ride. It's a live journaling company. I just started hosting retreats all over the world. I've had corporate clients, and it's a bit of a full circle moment, because I'm like, wow, I get to travel and do the depth that I felt like I was lacking.
Really cool. So when you, I mean, I don't know which one to go after first, because there's actually very different businesses here, but any business that you started, did you have this massive vision? So with Joe Club, when you started doing the journaling, when it started to take off, did you think, actually, this is what I see? Did you have a thing that drew everything together, a vision, a passion, a North Star? What was it like?
I love this question. So we could talk about the first company, Shut Up and Go. I did have a vision. I always had a vision, and it was always bigger than myself. I think that was the key. The North Star is like, it needs to benefit people, not just me. It needs to benefit people that I know have been thirsty for this, just like I've been thirsty for this. So whether it was Shut Up and Go, and with Shut Up and Go, the vision of that company was, let's make young travel accessible. Let's show them that it's hard. Yeah, sometimes you have to sleep in crappy, crowded hostels, but it's still worth it, right? And look at all of these doors that are going to open in your life if you learn these languages. That was Shut Up and Go. And with Joe Club, it's the same thing. The vision is different, similar but different. The vision is your thoughts, your feelings, they matter. You need to understand who you are. The core of every decision that you make comes from your own relationship with yourself. And if you have a crappy relationship with yourself, your entire value system is going to be wobbly, and you're going to get into these jobs that you don't like, and you're going to look back and be like, what life have I lived? So I guess both of them align with, like, I wanted to build things that reminded people that life is finite, like that it's not going to be forever. And if you can exercise the agency that you have, whether that means booking a cheap flight or cracking open your journal and listening to your thoughts, that could be the catalyst to make your life more fulfilling, as you deserve. I think that's the root of everything that I do.
And when you had this idea, how did you then start to create like an action plan for how you were going to get that into the world from there?
I'll show you a giant notebook.
I mean, it would have to be something written down, obviously.
Look, I do this all the time. People don't even realize. So the question, like, do you have a vision? Yes, I have a vision, but the vision changes. The vision changes, and you work through things, and you draw things out, and you make plans for the year. And guess what? Those plans change. This is my entire plan for next year with all of my travels and business ventures.
Love it.
And I jot this down because I'm like, okay, this is the rough draft. This is like the pencil version. Without that pencil version, without that rough draft, without a blueprint, you can't even make modifications. So I feel like the number one thing is a lot of reflection, thinking about it, but then you have to throw it all on paper. I have journals for all occasions. I have, like, literally, I'm a notebook queen.
Love it. Love it. I love a notebook.
And it's like, it's not a coincidence that most of the world's and history's greatest thinkers kept journals and kept notebooks, whether you're starting a company or starting a brand or starting a movement or whatever it is, or looking for your relationship that's your dream relationship, it starts with like that brain dump of what do you actually want? And then you mold it. I think it's just the idea that most people are afraid of starting things, but I think they're not really afraid of starting things. They just don't know how to start. And it starts with like an imperfect draft.
Yeah. No, completely. Because in the book, I kind of talk about goal setting, about having that big vision, but then how you need to start getting specific on how that big vision comes into life. And then you need to break it down into smaller bits, which do take that reflection. And is it really what you're going to want? And what things can you do? And then assembling that action plan, which then moves you into actually the step-by-step process you need to take to do that thing.
Exactly. There's that saying, like, how do you eat an elephant? Like one bite at a time or whatever, which I think is so bizarre as an expression, because why would you eat an elephant? But yeah,
I'm with you on that completely.
Yeah, the concept is it's overwhelming. And I also think the vision changes. Like with all of my businesses, they change. That you think it's going to be one thing, and then you really believe in that thing, and then you go for it all in. You go 100%. And guess what? 99% of the time, that vision is not going to work. And then you have to do the process again. And you're like, okay, let me go back to the drawing board. I thought this was my core business, but actually, this is my core business. And I think it's in this ability to kind of like massage your way through it, pivot, surf a bit, like keep your balance when things are throwing you off, and to have that clarity to, even if the bills are coming in hot and you have no money coming in, you still have to be like, all right, what is another exit out of this? Like, what's the door that I haven't looked at? And that's when the business actually becomes something even greater than your initial vision. Like when I started Joe Club, I was just like, oh, this is a membership business. And anybody who I've ever talked to says membership businesses are the hardest businesses, especially when they're low ticket. So I'm offering a service that in the beginning, I was charging $12 a month. In order to make that a profitable business, you would need hundreds and thousands of members if that's your only core business. But I didn't give a crap because I was making money in other ways. And I'm like, I just love this company. I love the people that it's attracting. So I kept running the business. The membership kept growing. And then I was like, you know what? I want to create a retreat. I wonder if people would trust me enough to pay me money and like come travel with me in the middle of nowhere, Croatia. And that was last year. I did a first retreat. It sold out within 2 emails. Wow. I didn't even have pictures of the property. I didn't even tell them where we were going. They just knew Croatia, fly to Zagreb. I organized this entire retreat. Next thing you know, I have 9 amazing people coming. I had never seen them in person. They knew me from all of these years. Wow. And this retreat was so successful that I was like, wow, I love this and I want to do it again. And so then I hosted another one this year. Same thing, new women, 9 women came in. And then guess what? I hosted another one in Mexico for 20 people. And I'm just like, wait, I think this is actually where the future of this business is. And I couldn't have guessed that when I started this company, and that's the beauty of it.
I think that's really positive though, because some people on their entrepreneurial journey, they think, well, what if I don't reach my goal? What if my goal changes? And they actually can see it as a negative. But I genuinely think, I know with my own business, the kind of weird path that's taken, but you make those decisions and you plan your next steps and you reassess your goals based on new information, what your group's saying, what your market's saying, what's going on. So I don't think it's a negative when your goals change. I think it can be massively positive and shows that you are reacting to the situation, you are pivoting in line with what's required.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, I think, one of those qualities that makes successful entrepreneurs really bad at following rules. Like I was not good at school, because if something wasn't working, I'd be like, okay, let's change everything. Like, let's pivot, let's figure it out. Obviously, there are pros and cons to that perspective as well, because a lot of the visionary entrepreneurs give their teams nightmares because they change plans. I know that my team is always like, Joe, calm down. But I think that's actually the magic sauce. If you do it within, reasonable means to make sure that everybody's on the same page, I think that's the magic, to see an opportunity change, to see a situation change, and to react. And to not only react, but to embrace that change and be like, damn, this is actually a better business model, not only financially, but for what I stand for and what I want to do for the next decade.
One of the parts in the book talks about how, well, should you go all in on something? And this is really thinking about people who maybe have got a full-time job doing something else and develop these side businesses. And obviously, whilst I appreciate you've had your own business, I would perhaps say, you can obviously correct me if I'm wrong, that when you started doing the journaling, that was kind of a side hustle to the rest of your business. And I would really like your thoughts on that, because why did you stick with what you were doing and kind of grow the journaling rather than thinking, actually, you know what, I want something different? Throw that all in the bin. Let's do this now.
Well, so the beginning of my journey was exactly that. Like, I was offered a full-time job in New York City, getting paid $45,000 to live, this Manhattan glamorous life. 45,000 is not a lot, by the way, when you're dealing with $70,000 of student loan debt. But it was a lot more money than I had ever seen at the time. And I was given this opportunity, and I actually turned it down and quit the job to move to Los Angeles with a crap ton of debt and no backup plan. And that was a crazy decision, because I was couch surfing for the first few days, first few weeks, found a crappy apartment filled with rats, filled with literally rats and roaches.
Oh, I can't deal with rats.
I know. And the roaches bit me, and I'm allergic. I know, it's terrible. It's actually terrible. So there I was, sitting with welts on my body every single day, drinking crappy coffee, working. There was no plan B. Like, it was either you find the money or you find the money. It was like, I don't come from a background where family has money to support. They had nothing. And not only did they not have anything to support me, they were like actively saying it was going to fail. So it was classic, everything is against you. And in that pressure, amazing things happened. Right. And here's the thing, I don't advise anybody to do that unless you take a serious look at your own risk aversion, because not everybody can handle that kind of risk. And people have different variables, right? Like, I didn't have kids, I didn't have a family. I was helping my family, but not in the way that other people might have to at the time. When I did that, though, it was like, damn, if you throw yourself in, you will find a way to swim. Like, if you really want to survive, you're going to learn how to paddle. And that was that example. But then with Joe Club, you're right, it wasn't a main thing, because I didn't even think it could have been a business. Like, when I first started it, I was like, I'm just curious if people would pay, because I did it for free for 90 days. I was doing live journaling for free for 90 days. And the response was incredible. People were like, oh my God, you're helping my mental health more than anything I've ever done. And I'm like, damn, this is something I want to get people in a room. So when I started, it was just testing. And then I had to be back on a Netflix show. So it wasn't even like I had a choice. It was like, okay, I have a commitment that I have to finish. But the fact that I didn't stop doing Joe Club while I was on this crazy, hectic schedule, sleep deprived, traveling around on a tour bus, like, really, you're shooting for 15 hours a day. Shooting a travel TV show is really hardcore. And I never not thought about Joe Club. Like, that was the one thing that I kept thinking about. That was the one thing I kept growing. And that was pretty obvious to me. I was like, damn, even if I'm sleep deprived, completely jet lagged, I will still find time to do this. And not only will I find time, I love doing it. And that was that. I think calculated risk is the best way to look at it, because even before I took that jump to Los Angeles, I was working towards that moment. I had been building momentum. You build momentum until you have no choice but to take off.
Yeah. But that can, as you said, that can look quite different for different people. If you've got kids, a mortgage, this, that, and the other, actually, the way you build momentum could be you start something on the quiet weekends, evenings, and that grows and grows and grows until there's that point when you assess it and go, actually, you know what, it is a risk, but it's a risk I can take at this point, and it's a calculated risk.
Correct. Yeah. Calculated risk is everything. And everybody's variables are going to look different. Whether you have a partner that can, you can have those discussions with a partner, or even having a business partner can help make that a little bit easier. Like, at the time, I was splitting rent with my old business partner. So it wasn't 1,500 on my tab, but also, even if I were alone, I would have found a crappy little room somewhere and paid whatever I could afford. But taking a big, deep look at the variables that you naturally possess, it could be things that you don't even think of. Like, I randomly am really good at catering, like, so then not cooking, but like serving at weddings. And so I started doing that, and it was like enough money to give me comfort to pay my bills and continue to work full time on the business, even though I was picking up those side tabs of catering or whatever. Like, you find a way to make it work, I think.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, are there any other kind of blocks that have you come across? I mean, I feel like you've come across a lot of blocks. I mean, starting off not knowing the language of the country you live in is mega. Then rats. I mean, you've dealt with a lot. Are there any other blocks that kind of come up for you on your way to where you are now that were really difficult to navigate around?
The hardest block is the one we build in our own minds. It is, and it's different things. It comes from different places. The creative block is a big one.
Yeah.
This feeling of I'm not good enough, I'm an imposter, I have nothing to offer. And this is not, I'm not even just speaking for myself now, like just even journaling with the world and having these people, having so many amazing, talented people in my life tell me these things, or even when people know that they're talented, they create a narrative in their minds that, yeah, but I can't get paid for my art, I can't find gigs. So it's like we are our own biggest blockers.
Yeah.
It's not really our fault. This is like based on careful calculation of survival,
Yeah.
of things that maybe we were told as kids. Like, I remember for a long time, I told myself that I wasn't a creative because my brother was an artist. He is an artist, so talented. And my sister's an incredible singer. And I was the only kid that didn't have a talent. And even today, I'm still like, yeah, I literally don't have a talent other than I can do a lot. Like, I can get a lot done. And so I created this personality, which actually benefited me in the long run, created a personality where I didn't have talent. I wasn't creative. I wasn't artistic. I was just hardworking. And that to me was good. But again, that's a narrative, because then when I started making videos, guess what? I was creative and artistic and talented in visual storytelling. Till this day, I'm like, yeah, it's okay. Like, I can sit for hours and just make these videos. And then my friends are like, Joanna, what the hell? Like, this is a masterpiece. I'm like, no, it's just me working. So it's an example like that where it's hard to like be honest with yourself and look at yourself in the same way other people look at you, because you are so busy being you that it's hard to look at yourself objectively and be like, wow, if only she focused on her creative side, where would she have been? It's those kinds of things that I think are blockers.
That is also, that imposter syndrome creeping in as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think many people, especially women and people of color and immigrant minorities, we have imposter syndrome. Everybody could have imposter syndrome. But when you don't feel like you are groomed to be in the room, you're not necessarily going to walk in full of entitlement. So you're just going to be happy to be there. And that's how I've been for most of my life. And again, double-edged sword, because my personality, having that humility and being like, I'm just so happy to be here, makes me likable. People are like, damn, I just want to hang out with Joe. But it also makes me undervalue myself. And it makes me, and this is like, I think a big kryptonite, because it's good. It gets you in the room and people like you there, but then it's bad because then you don't push forward and occupy the full space that you deserve and or should be, because you can even inspire other people in just living in your full potential.
How do you overcome that? How do you overcome this feeling like you shouldn't be in the room?
I always like to be curious about other people, take the attention off me. So I'll ask people questions. I mean, now you're doing the interviewing, but normally I would be drilling you down with questions, because I feel like I can add value in making people feel heard. So it's like, okay, I will be curious, do what I do, be genuinely interested in people. And then I'm not thinking about myself and being like, ooh, am I good enough to be here? It's like, no, actually, it doesn't matter why I got here. I'm just going to like enjoy my time and meet some really interesting people, whoever it is, whether it's an important room or just on the subway next to a stranger. It's that personality. I think it's a bit of like like a defense mechanism, but I think it's just like a tool that I use to combat imposter syndrome.
I think we all use tools, don't we? I've got clients who have got, imposter syndrome, because so many people have. And I would say to them, well, why are you imposter? Did you lie to get there? What lie did you tell to get there? Oh, well, I didn't. Okay, well that's good to know. Are you saying you can do something you can't? You know, and no, and actually you can kind of break it down that way as well. There are different tools you can use, and if I kind of think, oh my god, how did I get here? I think, well, actually, I know how I got here because I did this, and this, and okay, there might have been a sprinkling of luck along the way, but people don't do things by accident, do they? It is because of a series of things that have got you there. But I love the fact that you've kind of reframed that as to a, well, I'm here now, so let's make the most of it, rather than doubting yourself when you're there, because you're not going to get the best out of that experience, are you?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it doesn't matter really how I got in the room. I'm grateful to be here. It's unfortunate that, like, I think being a person of color, it really does question it. You're like, damn, am I here because I'm great at what I do? Or am I here because they need to check a box? And that's
Right.
something that a lot of my friends who are in rooms where, you're the only one that looks like you have to ask that question, because the climate that we're living in. They need to check the woman box, they need to check the person of color box. So for a lot of my career, as I was getting invited to speak at South by Southwest and all of these crazy events, it was always a question like, damn, am I here because I'm good, or am I here because you guys need to feel like you're doing a bit of like community service? And then it's like, that's not productive thinking regardless, because the point is, I am there.
Mm.
They trusted me enough to speak and represent whatever it was I was chosen to speak about. And so let's make the best of it. And that's kind of how, I think that's the only way to look at it. Because if you kill yourself thinking over and over again, like, is it because of this? You're just going to shrivel and shrink. And then it's like, well, no one's going to want you in any rooms if you walk in with your tail between your legs because you're uncertain of why you're even there. It's like, you're there, so shine in that room.
I love that. I really love that. And I haven't had anyone say that they've gone in and they've kind of thought, am I here because I'm good, or am I here because I'm ticking a box? But I think that could apply to lots of people. But as you say, the point is you're there. So regardless of why, make the most of it and make it count. And because you say the other option has hugely detrimental impact on your self-confidence, on your self-belief, and then what you can go on and do if you start to question and second guess things, because you don't actually know what's gone through that person's head. It could be that you're ticking a box, or it could be that someone's watched you, read about you, follows you, and go, actually, that person's a flipping rock star. We've got to have them here because they bring something unique and different that we need. You're never going to actually know, are you?
Yeah, and that's the crazy part. I mean, I've had situations where people flat out said, like, yeah, Joe, we needed diversity, so you're here.
Oh,
What
wow.
do you mean that?
Okay.
I'm like, well, I mean, at least you're being honest, but there are other diverse people. There are other people of color. So then you start like getting into the, not that it's good for anybody, but it's like, okay, even so, even if you're there because you quote unquote check a box, you're still there because it's not just that you check the box, you are good, or you have shined in whatever, you're there for a reason.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate that this is the world that we're living in, but yeah, I think that's the weight that people of color, women, anybody that represents an underrepresented community, you have to ask yourself. I know that it's like a quiet whisper, and I'm just like honestly talking about it now, but that's a big hurdle, I think, to overcome.
But I love that reframe, which is, I'm here now anyway, so let's crack on.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Is there anything else you would like to add or share before I let you go and live your life?
Well, tell me, what do you think the people need to hear?
I think you've given so many amazing tips. I think the stories are just so important. I know when I read a book, I love reading the theory, I love reading the strategy around things. But then when people say, this is how it worked for me, this is my situation, this is how I navigated through it, and just those little tips and tidbits people get and think, yeah, I'm going to try that, I'm going to give that a go, that's a real person, that's not just a theory in a textbook, that's how it was applied. So I think you've given masses and masses of value. I'm incredibly grateful for you.
One thing that I would like to say, when you don't have anything, like if you're starting as an entrepreneur and you really don't have much to work with, whether that means like you don't have family support, or you don't have the financial resources, or you don't have a business partner, or you don't even have an idea, what you always have is your attitude. And I think that's gotten me very far in life. It sounds cheesy, but it's really, really freaking true. You walking into a room with a smile on your face and a genuine curiosity, I think to me, that's the greatest value that
Yeah.
you can bring in a room. And that small energetic shift where you're like curious about other people, that's how my entire life has changed time and time again. It's like a genuine curiosity about other people, a genuine interest, relationship building, not because I want anything from anyone, but because I genuinely care. So that I think is the most underrated, if you want to call it a strategy. I call it more of just like a way of living my life, an
Yeah.
underrated superpower that everybody can cultivate that can drastically change your life. Because even if you don't get the financial opportunities or the career opportunities from these connections, what you do get is like that sounding board.
Yeah.
And many of my greatest ideas or pivots or reframes have come from those people in my life, those mentors in my life that just listen to me.
Yeah.
Like I could not have built what I have built without having genuine relationships of mentors and with my sibling. These are relationships you work really hard to build.
Yeah.
And very rarely does anybody come up with a, hey, Joe, here's a lump sum of cash by way of this opportunity. But listen, when they do, you're like, holy crap, we've been friends for 20 years. And I would have never guessed that this is how this would have played out. And I wasn't here for that. But when
No.
it comes, you're not shocked because you're like, no, this has been a genuine connection and you believe in me because you've seen me during this road. And so that I think is something as an entrepreneur that time is limited. We know this, but treating people well and maintaining relationships in a genuine way, I think is not only more beautiful, like it's a better way to live, but helps you go further in your journey.
Yeah, I've got a chapter actually all about, what's stopping you, like lack of time, money, and knowledge. And I've kind of gone through, like, if you've got a lack of time, I've got someone who's an absolute whiz on the kind of time management, carving out those chunks. But actually, if you've got a lack of a lot of stuff, you've still got you and your attitude. And it is this thing about, a talented person can only go so far, but actually someone who's rather untalented, but with the right attitude will go a whole lot further because they just will. They just will. They'll learn, they'll try. It's the mindset, isn't it? It's that growth mindset, it's that desire to learn. And I think it's really easy to kind of undervalue what you've got going on. Yes, you might have money in the bank, but if you are not a very nice person, if you don't want to learn, if you don't attack the situation correctly, you're not going to have success, regardless of all the other privileges or bonuses or benefits you've got.
Absolutely. And also you have your time. A lot of a great deal of my not only mentors, but like opportunity have come from first me volunteering, me just saying, hey, do you need help? And that I credit that to my mom, because my mom was always like, hey, you guys are the daughter and son, you're the daughters and son of the cleaning lady. You got to make yourself useful. This is where that mentality has brought me very far in life. It's like, if I'm in a room, and it's funny because if you're like this, you realize not many people are like this. If you're in a room with 20 people and there's an organizer, look around to see who's going to help the organizer clean up if there's like stuff on the table. If you're lucky, there's going to be one person. And guess what? The organizer is going to be like, damn, you're special. Thank you for helping me. When everybody else is just hurrying up, going about their day. You can't always be this saint, but like if you remember to help people, again, it comes down from this genuine need to want to help people, you will stand out. I don't think it's hard to stand out. It's just being kind and like attentive and listening.
You're amazing. I loved you before when I was doing the research. I'm completely smitten now.
Thanks, Rhea. I'll speak to you soon. If you need
You will.
anything else,
You
can
will.
chat on email.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Take care.
Have a good day.
To find out more about Jo, who is incredible, go and have a look at her website, joclub.world, or you can find her on social media at joclubfluent or jo_Franco or joclub_. Have a good search. Enjoy. She's a superstar. If you haven't got the book yet, go to Amazon or good bookshops and you'll be able to pick it up. Just search You've Got This and my name. Bye.